kids. We're gonna go fly in a Ford Tri-Motor.
Those magnificent men in their flying machines, they go up to the up, they go down to the down. Up, down, flying around, looping the loop and defying the ground. They're all frightfully keen, those magnificent men in their flying machines.
These people were in the 1920s among the first people ever to fly as passengers. Back in the 1920s, which was a long time ago, the idea that people could actually fly was a new thing. And to show how safe it was, they had a very famous aviator, Amelia Earhart, fly this new thing, the Ford Tri-Motor. You could see her at the controls. Airports in those days were muddy fields, back in the days when your great-grandmother was your age. So here it is, the airplane we're going to fly in, a Ford Tri-Motor built in 1929. Let's ask the pilot what it's like to fly it.
This thing has nice big windows. You fly down at an altitude, you can see outside something. And it really is just like 1929. The look of the airplane on the outside is just like 29. You know, we painted up the inside, the interior is just like 29. The smell, the sound, I mean, it's the same sound. And we fly about the same altitudes they would have then. And you might think of it as kind of like a time machine. It transports you right on back to 1929.
This airplane is what is known as a tail dragger because the tail sits on a little wheel in the back end of the plane. Let's check out the front of the aircraft. It may look a little weird next to today's big jet airliners, but back then, engines weren't very powerful, so they needed 3 of them, 2 under the wings and 1 up in the nose, which is why it's called a tri-motor. See? And here's an unusual sight. See the little gauges mounted on the wing struts over the engines? That's how the crew was able to see the oil pressure. And this front view lets you see how there's nothing like the Ford Tri-Motor today, except maybe another Ford Tri-Motor. Walking around the other side of the Tri-Motor, you can see the weird corrugated skin with Eastern Air Transport painted on it. That became Eastern Airlines, which for half a century was one of the great airlines. These cables on the outside skin of the airplane run from the pilot's controls in the cockpit to the ailerons on the wing and the rudder and elevators on the tail. These are the parts that tell the Tri-Motor where the pilot wants it to go. Now let's go aboard, myself and the other 9 passengers. The Tri-Motor carries 10 passengers and 2 crew, a pilot and co-pilot. It's very luxurious. For 1929, since this was one of the first airliners, the builders tried to make the cabin look like the inside of a passenger train with wood paneling along the walls. Okay, the engines are starting and beginning to warm up. We had to let the engines run for a few minutes to warm up the oil to the proper temperature. If we didn't do that, the engines could quit, which would make for a very bad day. This particular Ford Tri-Motor was built on August 21st, 1929, a time when there were still as many horses as cars. Radio was the new thing, and movies just got sound. Roads between cities were poor, there were no expressways, and everyone who took a long trip went by train. So this was something new, the idea of flying. Let's let the pilot tell us about this 82-year-old Ford Tri-Motor.
She does everything, nothing fast. She takes off at 80, climbs at 80, cruises at 80, and we come in for landing about 80. The main thing is that people are amazed how fast she gets off the ground. We'll be levitating off the ground at about 600 feet ground roll.
Here we go. All 3 propellers pushing air back over the airplane like 3 giant fans, pulling us faster and faster. Back in 1929, the passenger sitting in my seat probably looked at a grass field, which gave them a very bumpy takeoff. But we're on modern concrete. It wasn't as noisy as I thought it would be as we started to roll down the runway. And in fact, I thought we picked up speed pretty fast, finally going fast enough for the pilot to pull back on his wheel, lifting us off the runway and climbing higher and higher. As you can see, the landing gear doesn't fold up like it does on today's airliners. That's another thing that wasn't invented yet back in 1929. The big windows give us quite a view as we reached our cruising altitude, 5,000 feet, flying at about 80 miles an hour. Today's airliners cruise up to about 37,000 feet at close to 600 miles an hour. We're starting to fly up the Mississippi River towards downtown St. Louis on this mostly cloudy, partly sunny, partly rainy day. But the view is spectacular anyway, through these big, wide windows. As you can see from this outside view, the airplane flies pretty straight and steady, even if it is a bit slow. But the pilot up there in the cockpit has a great view of everything. The instruments are pretty rudimentary in comparison to today's airplanes with all the visual graphic displays.
Hey kids, what do you think?
The pilot has nothing but praise for this beautiful old airliner.
Gracious, wonderful airplane to fly. It's kind of like a grand older lady, you know, just wonderful, sweet to you, totally gracious, will do anything for you as long as it's what she wants to do.
Heading up forward, you can see inside the cockpit on the left side is the pilot, the guy we spoke to earlier, and on his right happens to be a pilot who flew this airplane back in the late 20s and early 1930s. He's close to 100 years old, and for him, this ride must be spectacular and filled with memories. Back when he was young, getting around wasn't as easy as it is today. And then came this new thing, flying from place to place.
This was used back in that era for the first transcontinental trips. But they flew during the daytime and took Pullman cars on a train at night.
Yeah, they took 3 different, 2 nights and 3 days of flying. And you'd fly New Jersey into Ohio, and then it would be nighttime, get on a train, go through the night, and then there would be another airplane waiting for you the next morning. Fly out to just the Southern Rockies, get on the train, go through the mountains, and then Arizona somewhere you'd pick up and fly on into Southern California. Schedules.
Well, I guess all good things must come to an end, as we're now approaching the runway and getting lower and lower and lower. Oh, there's the end of the concrete runway, as the pilot now flares out, as they call it, just above the runway to slow down to make a very soft touchdown. Boom, and now we're on the ground, beginning to roll to a stop. Okay, I guess it's time to take off the seatbelt, get up and walk down toward the door so we can head out of the aircraft. This is what flying was like when your great-grandmother was your age.
Well, kids, what'd you think? Great, huh?
Pretty modern aircraft for its day.
Oh, yeah.
Those magnificent men in their flying machines, they go up to the up, they go down to the down. They enchant all the ladies and steal all the scenes with their up to the up and their down to the down. Up, down, flying around, looping the loop and defying the ground. They're frightfully keen, those magnificent men in their flying